Welcome to another episode of our Personal Empowerment Premium Audio Series, Finding Yourself in Paradise. Hi, I'm Michael Bennett.
And I'm Steve Snyder. And today's show... What was that? No, I'm in the middle of something. I'll get back to you about an hour or so. Today's show is on distractions. You know, things that sort of take you out of your zone and pull you away from your concentration. We want to talk about the flip side of attention, the flip side of concentration, those things that pull us out of that place of focused passion and take us into that stress mode we move into so easily.
You know, this whole idea that we could manage distractions, in other words, get better at how easily distracted we are, we may be able to change or adjust that threshold from very easily distracted because you want to be to it's almost impossible for me to be distracted when I focus to this degree. If what we're saying is true, and I'm going to make the case with Steve today that it is, even a sense of identity can be found in I'm the one that can manage how I respond to distractions. It's that same mindful detachment, that one step back of saying, wait a minute, I'm not just this thought stream driving through my head. I can choose this thought and affirm it, or choose to reject that thought as part of an old pattern that I've decided to release and let go. And to be aware mindfully that you are the person that can make that choice is something we'd like you to consider at the top of this show. Maybe you could make a choice about whether you want to be distracted now because you're really brainstorming or thinking your way through as a business manager or maybe a family leader, a situation that could go south on you where it's critical and it's very important and you might want to be easily distracted by a mind that anticipates problems. And then at another time, focused attention, the way Steve reads and talks about being able to read even with the TV on. What if you are the person that can manage that? That's what we're going to argue today, and it's a very exciting possibility.
So being clear, we're talking about distractions and not like the natural end of your attention span, because everybody has an attention span. Some are shorter and some are longer, and there's no real advantage over a long attention span or over a short attention span. Particularly, it's how well you use your attention span, because the recovery rate's so quick. I mean, after paying attention for a few minutes, 10 seconds, and you're ready to do a few more, or even 20 minutes, 10 seconds, and you're able to do 20 more. So it really doesn't matter much how long your attention span is. It's being able to put them back to back to back. But we're talking about distractions to get you in the middle of your attention span, whether your attention span is 5 minutes or 20 minutes, somewhere in that pulls you away in the middle of that. That's what we're looking at. And there's a pattern. I mean, there are certain kinds of things that do it and certain kinds of things that don't do it. And certain voices, for example, you automatically respond to, and certain voices you won't. Certain sounds, certain times of day people get distracted by hunger and by other so there's patterns in the distractions that come up for you, and it's something that you could monitor and learn about, because the more you understand what distracts you, the more you can, as we're saying, manage those distractions. Some are fine, we want that little voice that says, hey, yeah, it's time for lunch, I mean, we want some, but other voices like the 13th time today that says, are you sure you're going to mail that letter? I've already had 12 of those. I don't need another one of those. Some distractions are valuable, some are not. I can learn and have learned in my life to turn on the ones that are powerful and work for me, and turn down, almost to the point of being completely inaudible, the ones that I don't want to listen to.
There you go. That's exactly what we're talking about. The ability to manage whether you want to be easily distracted or have your concentration focused. I mean, the website that serves you this program is focusedpassion.com. We're very much into being focused. Indeed, that's what narrow awake, or the level of focused passion as the alpha brainwave level. This is one of the main threads of our whole series, that as you develop yourself in every area of your life, you're going to want some practice in the world. You're going to want to develop yourself in a behavioral sense. There's a mental and emotional aspect to all of this. But to integrate all of that, to rehearse, to learn, to understand, to rehearse your performance in these special states, these narrow awake states of focused passion, free from distraction. That's one of our core teachings, the main thread that runs through really all personal and I would say spiritual development too. Depends on why you're closing your eyes and relaxing and feeling safe. What's your point? Is it to know yourself as a personality and develop that self? Or is it more of a mystical to understand my relationship to the one life and all that is? Or you can use these levels of mind to find your keys when they're lost or figure out a math problem that's stumping you. That's the thing about being free from distraction. And again, not being a victim of that, but in charge of that. I'm responsible. I'm going to learn today from Steve and Michael a little bit about how to manage that, to provide for myself focused concentration when I want it, focused passion. And at other times, without undue stress and worry and anxiety, to be able to be easily distracted, to look around, to consider this possibility and that possibility. Boy, this is being in the captain's chair of the Enterprise here. Now you're the starship captain.
It's really cool. I did something very similar to that, actually, day before yesterday. I was out in my big fragrance garden, lots of flowers kind of thing, and I did 2 exercises. One was, I gave myself, it was 2 minutes. I just picked 2 minutes. I'm going to take 2 minutes on this one flower, and I'm not going to be distracted. The idea is I'm just going to stay for 2 minutes on this whole flower. And actually, it was like the color of it more than anything else. But I'm going to just really stay, and I did. After like 2 failures to do 2 minutes, I came back and did it again. And on the third attempt, I stayed at least 2 minutes, probably more like 3. And then the next exercise, I went to do 2 minutes without focusing on any one flower. Like, just let my attention take in all the flowers as a gestalt, let my eyes just roam back, but without being distracted by any single thing. Just let myself expand my awareness to the whole of the thing. It was a very cool exercise. I was able to do that the first time. It was like easy. It just this whole nothing. It was so many things, no one thing. So basically, what I was doing is learning to sort of exercise my mind to not be distracted in 2 different ways, coming from kind of both ends of the spectrum, by focusing on one thing and staying there, and then by not focusing on any one thing, focusing on a gestalt of things and staying there. So it was really a cool exercise, and I find a good way to build your ability to manage distraction.
So are we then going to say that might be a distraction from your normal train of thought, or that was a distraction-free experience that you're talking about?
Well, it was intended. I mean, my train of thought took me to, it'd be kind of cool to walk over down there and do this exercise with myself. So it was an intended consequence of a planned thought. But for example, let's say I'm working on a project, writing project or something, and I glance over in that direction and I see all those flowers, and I go, wow, and it takes me away from my writing project. Sometimes, I put down the tab and the iPad and I go walk over there, and, it's like 40 minutes later, oh yeah, and, so sometimes it's too much of a distraction. Sometimes I manage it well.
All right, so it is. It could be then. Here's my point. Distractions are not always negative things.
No, not at all.
Distractions are not always danger.
Usually not.
It's not stress only that could create or stimulate distraction.
Although, for most people, if they're like, if they have an agenda and then a distraction takes them out of that agenda, it causes them to be stressed at the thing, even if the thing wasn't stressful in itself. The fact that, damn, it took me away from what I was focused on is stressful.
That wonderful, positive, pleasurable, rich experience.
I was in the zone. I was in the flow. I was really enjoying, and all of a sudden this insect, came by, or this car horn, or this, alarm, car alarm went off, or, those kinds of things that we have very little control over. The key, I think, with those kinds of distractions that are just, they happen, is how quick can you come back? Like if that car alarm is going to go on for 40 minutes, are you going to be distracted for 40 minutes? Or are you going to be able to put that noise in the background and go back to the project that you're working on? If that, if it's hot outside, that's a distraction, but you're outside and it's hot. Are you going to is that going to be like a victim experience for you? And you're going to focus on the distraction, the negative distraction in that case? Or even, again, stop and smell the roses, but if you get stuck all day on the roses and you don't get the work done, So distractions are time-based, Sometimes a short distraction is wonderful. That same short distraction expanded to a lot longer is not a good thing. So, it's a very subjective experience, but stop and smell the roses means pay attention to life's distractions. I mean, it really does. I mean, get off of like this one-track mind thinking you're doing and notice the things along the path. Those are theoretically distractions from this tunnel vision place you're aiming at. So distractions are wonderful in that they fulfill and expand our lives. But being overwhelmed by distractions and not going down that path, therein the problem lies.
All right, because then we almost need a separate word, or certainly to acknowledge the difference between what you're describing here and a fear-based distraction. I mean, you've even got the word distraction. It just looks negative and often is stimulated by danger. It's the amygdala. It's the fight or flight deal. It's survival-based. And I don't know what value there is in saying, well, most distraction is negative and some could be positive.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know if any distraction is negative if it's utilized in a very proper way. I mean, if it just distracts you and you go, oh, that was cool, and then come right back and no harm done.
If you have no control over managing it would be my only argument.
Right. That's the issue. It's not the distraction itself. It's not the stimulus. It's the perception and response part.
Well, the feedback loop, that vicious cycle of the frustration causing you to be more easily distracted, which creates more frustration and a greater likelihood you'll be easily distracted.
Exactly. And if you get guilty about being distracted, and then distraction becomes even more of a big deal, and then, it's a very vicious cycle. What we must understand is that, at some point, the mind needs to be distracted, or come to the end of its attention span, whatever. Something has to take you away from whatever it is, no matter how pleasurable it is, no matter how wonderful. At some point, the mind has to go somewhere else. It's just the way it works. So not all distractions are bad. Some are essential for sanity. Otherwise, we're talking about obsessive thinking that never goes anywhere else. So, but there is no word. That's a fascinating concept you mentioned, Mark. There's really no word for what we call a positive distraction. The kind of thing that aids us by taking us out of our, focused intensity. The thing that causes us to stop and smell a rose, that's a distraction, but a good distraction. We need, really to clearly there's a difference between the kind of distraction that is fear-based, like the fight or flight reaction, which is really, that's way beyond distraction, but any fight or flight reaction, versus the kind of distraction which is just caused by train of thought going off into a daydream. You're writing about something and all of a sudden it triggers a memory and you go off and remember, that kind of distraction, that internally created distraction, can bring up some wonderful thought. The power, I think, is it's going to happen. You're going to go off of some tangents. How quickly can you bring yourself back? I think that's one of the most powerful strengths of human mind is if anybody gets distracted, how quickly can you recognize, okay, I have a choice here. I can keep going off on this tangent, or I can become conscious that I'm not this thought going off here, and I can really decide it's a bigger priority to come back to this project I was working on. And that's sort of that higher conscious observing the two thoughts going on and saying, I'm going to choose to come back from that distraction quicker.
Well, let me quiz you about this then, because you just said project you're working on. When we talk about distraction, I'd suggest, that we have a project, that we have
good point.
a mainstream to come back to.
Yeah, because if we're just sort of sitting around thinking or sitting around not thinking, then really distractions don't exist.
Basic Zen meditation, Zazen, for example, is a meditation where you don't try not to think. You don't look for the gaps between the thoughts or listen for the silence. You just take one step back like a spectator at a baseball game. You sit up in the stands with your beer and your hot dog and watch the game. You just watch those thoughts
without being
unfold.
emotionally attached at all to them.
That's the idea. And if an emotion comes up, you just don't attach to the emotion.
Yeah.
But you have the thought, you have the emotion, but it's a player on the field. And in a few more minutes, they'll trade sides. And I mean, that's another curious thing about the thought stream, the stream of consciousness, as it's called, is that it does weave itself through topics. It doesn't really fixate on one topic. That would be an exception, to be in a daydreamy place and stay with one topic for a long time. We can't have these full-on, like, lucid dreams.
The exception would be rehearsed, like daydreams. Like repeating dreams or repeating daydreams. Like you have this idea of this vision, this goal, this dream, and you purposely think it over and over again, and so it becomes like part of your consciousness. But no, the mind is much more creative than to play replays all the time. It goes and makes up new stuff all the time.
You can feel the weaving in and out in your mind in those moments where you push your work away. I think it's a civilized thing the British do to have tea time in the afternoon. You know, we should have one of those in the morning, and I like siesta. I like the whole idea of breaks throughout the day because we actually get more done, and the quality of what we do improves when we take these little breaks and don't push ourselves so hard. But I think another thing we need to do here, Steve, is sort of distinguish between internal distractions and external distractions. If the mind is a distraction at all, could the mind distract itself? We're defining everything in terms of the mental nature, but we have experiences in the body, sensations. We have 5 physical senses, 6 if you want to call the intuition a sense. And then this kinesthetic ability to feel sensation in the body. Maybe the distraction is it itches down here, and ignoring it is not helping. I've got to stop and itch, and now I lost my place in my book. I have to go back to that. Or hunger, or suddenly feel incredibly nervous, anxious, even paranoid for no apparent reason. This feeling distracted you. So it could be external and internal, either or, right?
Right, either or, sometimes both. But what's most important to do is to identify those things that bother you, that cause you to be distracted in that way, because there's a pattern. There's a pattern in there. It's most likely the same kinds of things that were bothering you last year and the year before that, and obviously many cases all the way back into childhood. So we want to take a look at what kinds of things cause us our anxiety to rise, cause our blood pressure to go up. For most people, it breaks down into sort of 4 categories. Michael mentioned 2, internal or external. Like, are we worried about? Are we like hypersensitive or oversensitive to the external stimulus? Does your body get uncomfortable often? Do you get too hot? Do you get too cold? Do you itch? Is insects bother you? Is noises out there? Is it it's just such a beautiful view that you can't stop looking at it? Whatever. Are you a person that's distracted by that stuff? Primarily, and which of that stuff, or is it more like the stuff inside? Then once it's the stuff inside, then that breaks down into sort of 2 categories, which is it the past and future? Are you like focusing in on just being distracted by guilt and remorse and regret? Or is it the stuff in the future, which you could bundle under the whole category called worry, like figuring out what could go wrong and figuring out that kind of stuff. So lots of people are internally distracted either by the past and or the future. Some people are more hypersensitive to being externally distracted by the things that are going on in the world. Some people are distracted by positive thoughts. They daydream and fantasize things. And some people are distracted more by negative thoughts. And again, I think an important point we made earlier that I think I'd like to get back to is that you have to have something to be distracted from. You really do have to be in a project or in a book or in a writing thing or you have to be doing something that has some kind of beginning, middle, and end to it, Otherwise, what you're just talking about is just mind going where your mind goes. It's when you have an intention of your mind being in one place and it goes somewhere else that we're talking about.
Nobody even talks about this. And you and I, in the past, have worked to try and find a way of describing it I mean, I think what we came up with was applied thinking.
Yeah,
when you
practical
apply
thinking and applied thinking, yeah.
I mean, this...
Purposeful thinking, I think, was another
There is
name
a
we gave
good
to
one,
it.
yeah, or deliberate.
Intentional, yeah. It's like having it in your mind where you want your mind to go, rather than just letting your mind go where it goes or watching where it goes.
It's the difference between being in the driver's seat and being a passenger over here,
Yeah.
just enjoying the scene.
That great line about there are three ways people take things. Some people make things happen. Some people watch what happens. Some people wonder what happened. It's like you can be intentionally making things happen. You can be clearly in the moment watching it happen. You can be going, "Whoa, what just happened?" And people do live their lives in those three different ways.
You could drive, you could ride shotgun, or you could be in the trunk.
In the trunk, going, what's going on here? Where am I? Exactly. Nicely put.
It's like the Hangover movie. What's in the trunk? So let's look at this. Could a good idea be a distraction? Could a good idea, a solution, be a distraction? See, we're defining terms here.
It can, given a time basis. That is, a good idea, for example, a better can opener or something like that. You're spending hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours on it, and you have no means of actually creating the thing. Then it could be a good idea, but you're wasting a whole lot of time. So even the best idea, if you're never going to act on it and you spend a whole lot of time with it, might be a distraction that's very, very painful. Can take a lot of your life away. I mean, a lot of people have wasted a lot of their lives on good ideas and having taken no action on it, just thinking about the idea. So yeah, even a great idea, I think, can be a horrible distraction if you spend too much time and never get anything done.
You're talking then, of course, about an idea that looks like a result, but it doesn't necessarily have a method or a means to get to that result.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people will tell me, I invented something. Really? How does it work? Well, I haven't figured that part out yet.
I just know the result. Well, even if they do...
But I got a great idea.
Even if they do, put it on paper and, figure out how... But they don't have the means to actually manufacture the thing, or they don't have the means to actually implement the idea, then, still... If nothing ever comes of it, if nobody ever benefits from it, they don't make anything, and it doesn't serve in any way.
The cars, the flying cars and the Jetsons. I've got a great idea. Metropolis, 1920s, they had the same thing. Flying cars by the year 2020. I guess there is one or two flying automobiles out there, but they're not practical. So is it a great idea to say flying cars? Everybody has their own little airplane. Great idea. Well, it's not really a great idea if you don't have the means to get there. It might be a good seed thought, might be something that needs revisiting every once in a while. But when we talk about ideas, they're really complex. There is an idea to do this. Do you know what you want? But then there's this whole set of ideas about now, how do I get to this desired outcome or result? So all I'm saying is sometimes a great idea, an inspiration, a little burst of awareness might seem like a distraction, but it depends on how you're using the terms. And I think Steve's more inclined to say that you could have a positive distraction. I'm still a little more biased toward, to me, distraction is a negative thing, but that mental process is what we want you to get a handle on, that whether it's good or bad or right or wrong, what if you can manage it? Then you decide for yourself, am I a victim of my thinking, as most people are, or am I able to mindfully detach, take a step back, and watch this thought process, apply it where it needs to be applied, and then let it go and have its way with me when I desire to be particularly mindful and detached. That's a pretty exciting... I wish somebody had told me when I was young about this choice. I stumbled onto it little by little, bit by bit. Nobody ever really sat me down and explained to me that you're not your thoughts, you're really an awareness of that process on some level, to some degree, to some extent. I had to figure that out for myself. I think that's one of the things that has bound Steve and I and many of our friends are, do you understand the potential that human beings have available to them when they work with awareness and consciousness, not just thoughts and emotions, but the awareness of the thoughts and the emotions in the same way you have a body and then may or may not be very aware of that body and how it feels to be in a body. So awareness pervades everything. It's everywhere equally present. Be aware of your thoughts. Be aware of your emotional nature. Be aware of feelings in your body. Be aware of your impact on other people. Be aware of your responsibility radiating out into the world, your connection to all things, and be that awareness. If you are, it's impossible to be distracted. But if your thoughts or your feelings or a particular behavior, if you're focused in on that to such a degree that you identify with being that, especially thoughts, that's what most people do. They live in their heads. I am my thoughts. Then it's much easier and more likely that you'll end up distracted and maybe even frustrated by it.
Yeah. And I notice I spend more and more of my life doing 4 basic things. Listening, speaking, reading, and writing. I'm spending a whole lot of my time doing those 4 things. And I find I rarely get distracted when I'm speaking. I mean, I just, it doesn't happen very often. I'm getting really good at not getting distracted when I'm listening. I used to get distracted a lot when I was listening, thinking like, well, when is this person going to be finished so I can say what I want to say? Or, well, that reminds me of a... But I've gotten much, much better at... I've sort of tested myself, especially in my relationship with my wife, of listening carefully enough to be able to feed it back to her. So I don't necessarily always feed it back to her, but I want to make sure I could if I needed to. So I'm really getting much better at listening. And, of course, doing these shows with you, I listen, very clearly to you, because it gives me the next cue to what to talk about. So listening, I don't get distracted too often. It's in reading and writing I frequently get distracted. And what I've done, and I talk about the concept of positive distractions, at some point I'm going to get distracted. At some point my attention span is going to end. So what I do is I use the opportunity of the distraction. I'm reading in my book, and all of a sudden my mind is not on the book. I use that opportunity to do 2 things. One is to take a deep breath, which is just something... It's so good to remind yourself to do that. And so I find myself distracted. I use that opportunity to take a deep breath. And then what I usually do, not always, but what I often do is switch from what I was reading to what I'm writing. And then I'll write some more until I get distracted, and then I'll switch back to what I'm reading. And I've been doing a lot of that and finding the distraction as a way of saying, okay, my attention span on this has come to its end. Now, do I want to go back to the book and do another one there, or do I want to switch over to... And so I find myself sort of like using the distraction as a way of saying, okay, enough for this right now, for the moment. Take a deep breath, relax a little bit. Now, which one do you want to do? And often I'm finding myself switching to the other one. So using distraction in a positive way, using distraction to remind me to take a deep breath, and also to keep me entertained, so I don't get too wrapped up in either one of those projects and forget about the other one. Because I want to finish that book I'm reading, and I want to keep finishing that book I'm writing. I want both of those things to be moving along.
Well, and following up on that, I think what you're saying is we have to acknowledge the distraction. If you try to ignore a distraction, or if you allow your frustration to make you feel like you need to push it away or pretend it's not there to minimize the effect of the distraction, you're going to ignore it or deny it. That's not going to work. That's just exactly the opposite. But if you acknowledge the distraction, allow it to come upon you, move over you, and just long enough, it doesn't take, any additional time. It's a matter of opening yourself, turning your attention, committing fully and completely to the distraction. Yes, I've been distracted by this. Now you can manage it.
I remember in my early hypnosis training, the teachers would say, use something like outside sounds and noises will make you even more relaxed. Don't try and ignore them. Just use the sounds as part of the process of allowing yourself to even relax deeper.
Exactly. Every time the dog barks, I'll go deeper and more relaxed.
Oh, man. One time I was doing a hypnosis session with, I think it was my business partner at that time, girlfriend. And it was one of those stormy nights, and so like the lightning would go, and then a little bit later was the thunder, So every time, and she had her eyes closed, and I saw the lightning, and I said, "And you will go deeper." I was able to do that like six or seven times. I see the lightning, you will go deeper. It was like one of the coolest sessions I ever did.
That's pretty powerful. That's like hypnosis by Zeus.
Yeah, it was very powerful.
That's very good. So to acknowledge the distraction rather than fight it, let's take some examples. Well, the barking dog. How about this is a favorite of mine. How about a crying baby in a restaurant?
Or an airplane. Yeah, those two places.
Yeah. Now, if it's your baby, no problem. "Oh, Bill, isn't it cute? The way he cries endlessly. Don't you just love him? Here, you hold him." I understand that. But to anybody else, even people who absolutely love children, it can put you on edge. Because you're feeling the energy. The baby is upset for some reason. It may be the lack of pressure on its ears by being in the airplane or something it ate, or babies cry when they hurt. So that the sound would somehow hurt you makes perfect sense, right?
Even biochemically, we actually react to babies crying with a lot of hormones and a lot of chemicals going on.
Well, I'm just suggesting that instead of trying to push that away mentally, somehow ignore it or deny it, or use another distraction to distract you from that distraction, acknowledge it. Put your attention on it.
That's the key.
Relax and listen fully to every aspect of that sound that you possibly can. And think about the baby. And I'm not going to tell you what to think. It doesn't matter. If you just allow your mental and emotional nature to have its way with you, let it come upon you and do its thing. This is how we help people when they're grieving, for example, mourning and loss and bereavement. It's let that pain, that horrible feeling come up and come upon you and feel it fully and completely. You're built for this. It's okay. You're going to survive. Sometimes you think your heart's going to go to pieces, but the funny thing about a heart is that it can go to pieces without falling apart. We are built for this. Love is magnetic, and broken hearts grow, and they hold more love and they radiate more love. And sometimes a broken heart becomes much more loving as a result. So somebody that's slow to use the word surrender, especially in the West with all the negative connotations of surrender, or to die to the experience. But if you have the ears to hear what I'm saying, yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? And as long as you do that from a mindful place, then you can manage it. Then you can allow yourself to go into it thoroughly, experience it, and then come out the other side. You see, there's no way of avoiding these profound sensations, the pain, the hurt, the loss, just like the baby crying in the restaurant, maybe bringing up some very personal stuff for you that you could release right there on the spot. And notice the difference, because as a result of that release, that emotional release from your own childhood, that crying baby across the room doesn't irritate you nearly so much. What magic is this? You see, to allow yourself to feel your feelings fully and know you're going to survive it. It's when you push things away, even physical pain. The more you try to ignore physical pain, the more your body will amp up your sensitivity to it. It's only by feeling the pain that it becomes less uncomfortable and more tolerable.
That's such an important concept. As counterintuitive as it seems, the only way to make pain go away is to feel it as deeply as you can. And, it's the same with every emotion. It's not physical pain, it's emotional pain, but it's still the same concept. You got to feel it. You got to go through it. You got to go into it. If your primary distraction, as is true for so many people, is worry, and you're going to this painful experience of imagining a future that's worse than the present, however you want to put it, that there's something bad's going to happen or lots of bad things are going to happen. And of course, that every time you do that, part of your mind, most of your mind really thinks it's happening, and it like shoots off these adrenal glands. But if you could learn this one simple trick, and this goes back a long way. In fact, this is the one thing I think that Michael and I both experienced before we met each other, was a early entry point for both of us. The work of a brilliant guy named Jose Silva, who said, when you have a negative thought, say, cancel, cancel. Now, that's such a brilliant concept, because now your brain goes, oh, you don't want that. Oh, I get it. Don't make that happen. Just cancel, cancel. It can get to be so easy to say cancel, cancel. Or, you could do it a million other ways. You can take a deep breath and watch the picture of it disappear, or you could, have a slideshow where that goes away and a better picture comes. You can do a million things, but just the idea of, I had the thought, I'm not going to just let that go with my mind thinking that's what I want. I'm going to do something proactive to say, no, I want this instead. So cancel was my entry point. I know it must have been for you too, because you learned the Silva at the earliest stages of your entry into this field. So we both had that experience of knowing that just because we thought it didn't mean we had to do it, that we could change our thought simply by adding that little catchphrase that's so fun to say, actually, cancel, cancel.
Well, it's so hard to say this. You can't not think of something existing. You can only think of it existing and then try to make it go away. So cancel is like, well, you used to use this in training all the time. Don't think of a rainbow. The first thing that pops in your mind. Or don't think of a purple elephant.
And even if you say, think of a rainbow, think of a purple elephant, the same thing happens.
The same thing. And you say, well, but I got that international circle and X through it. Yeah, so it was, don't think it was a rainbow with an X through it. That's
still a rainbow in there.
Yeah, that's the nature of the way the mind works. It often thinks in pictures and or sounds. But
I thought of two rainbows. See, I didn't think of a rainbow.
To not think negatively is a crazy approach to all of this. You have to think positively. You have to put your attention on what you do want. And why wouldn't you want to think of rainbows? So negatives need to be replaced by positives, but only after they're acknowledged. Take a good look at the negative. Don't ignore it or deny it. A distraction is just another negative. And again, as Steve pointed out so well, I thought at the top of the program, what might be a distraction and what you might even initially think of as this frustrating interruption to your train of thought might be the answer you're looking for. It might be a wonderful positive idea or solution to your problem. So that's why we don't want to shut that thing down altogether. You have to program the dynamic. You have to drive the car, steer left, now steer right, now bring it back toward the center. How easily distracted do you want to be? How deeply focused do you want to be? And all of these ranges in between. The relative nature of things is one of the great wisdom teachings that many people, far too many people, cause so much pain and difficulty in their lives by believing in absolutes, that things should be all this or all that, completely right or totally wrong, or this one's good and all the others that are different, therefore must be bad. If there are absolutes, the philosopher tells you they're only in heaven. That in the material world, everything is relatively true. It's a matter of some of this and some of that. And if you think you know some truth, and you don't know any distraction, you don't know any contradiction, you don't see the paradox in that truth from time to time, you don't have the whole truth. You've just got part of the truth. And this is an ancient wisdom found in all cultures and all societies, that all truths are half-truths, that there is this relative truth, and you've got to know the bigger picture. And a distraction sometimes is arriving to help you flesh that out, even if it's contradictory.
So really, we can say that distractions can be good, but what we have to watch out for is time. If distractions take too long, if they take too much of our time. So what we need to do really is something that most people don't even consider, and that is decide how long we're willing to let ourselves be distracted. I mean, most people, when they sit down to do a project, read a book, write a book, whatever, they think, I'm going to do this for the next 2.5 hours or till lunch, or, they've got an intention of, I want to work on this project this long. But they don't have an idea of, when I get distracted in the middle of this project, which is going to happen because I don't have a 2.5 hour attention span, how long am I going to let myself space out or space in or go away from this project? That's something that I think is a real valuable key to doing this. Have an intention. I'm going to let myself be distracted for sure in the next 2.5 hours. I'll let myself be distracted a whole bunch of times, but never for more than a minute. The longest I'll let myself be distracted is a minute, and I've got this little thing inside that says a minute's up, so get back in, or 5 minutes, or whatever you decide to do. But we're talking about it's not up to the distraction. The distraction doesn't get to decide how long it's going to keep you away from your project. You get to decide. You don't get to decide whether you're going to have distractions. You're going to have distractions. What you do get to decide is how long they're going to take you away. And, managing your mind that way, managing your time. When you're reading a book, how fast can you recreate a new attention span? When you're doing your homework for students, how fast can you bring your attention back? How quick? It's not how often you go away. It's how quickly you can come back. And I think that's such a powerful tool for the human mind to do its best job. The longer you go away from something, the more catching up you have to do when you come back to it. The shorter the span you went away from it, you come right back to it. You can pick up right where you left off. Distractions are fine. Interruptions are okay. It's when you let them be in charge, when you let them decide how long they're going to be, and you don't take responsibility to manage your distractions and choose how long you're going to let them be. With the exception, of course, of real danger, in which case you have to go until the danger's gone. But other than that, you almost always have that choice.
Yep. Crazy to be a victim of your own thoughts. I think many more people are victims of their emotions and their thoughts. People know that they can choose their behavior. They're beginning to understand they can choose their thoughts. Say no to a thought, or maybe I'll think about it a little further. But it's only a few people that are on to the idea of choosing their emotional feelings. People, by and large, are still playing victim to their emotion. And if you say, well, you could choose to feel differently, they'd argue with you. But let's do an alpha journey. Let's go to our narrow, awake place of focused passion and practice what we're learning today. The whole idea of managing the threshold of how easily distracted do I want to be right now? And am I aware of the difference between applied, purposeful, deliberate thought and just letting go? And like the Zen student, experiencing that thought stream, the way you might sit in the rain and just let it come down upon you. And if it's warm and you're comfortable and enjoying the experience, you just letting it come down. You can do that with your thoughts through mindful detachment. Most importantly, be the person that knows the difference. Make sense? Good. Close your eyes and take a nice, slow, deep breath. I always do a few shoulder shrugs and some head rolls, get sort of loose, and begin the relaxation as you exhale and go all the way out beyond where you'd normally stop. And then 3 or 4 times, take nice, slow, deep breaths, inhaling through the nose. Hold for a full beat. And then exhale, and identify as the one who relaxes as you exhale.
And as you exhale, you find yourself becoming more and more relaxed. Mind quiet, body untaxed. And you find yourself in a peaceful place, a calm, serene, and tranquil place, where one of the great attractions is that it's free of distraction. For whatever your mind goes, That's what it knows. Whatever the eye of the mind sees, whatever it please. Anything's okay in the mind this way. So allow yourself to feel the peace that comes from imagining this place. This beautiful, tranquil, quiet, and serene, this really idyllic space. And know that your mind is yours to manage. And what you'll find as you do is as you manage your mind, you'll find distractions become easy for you. You have them, you manage them, you let them go. You move on to the next thing, and then you know that this distraction was something in your command. You held it in the palm of your hand. It was easy. It was just a moment or two and took you away, but then you knew that you could just let it go and come right back, get right on focus, right on track. Distractions are easy for you to handle. It's something you become quite proficient at doing. And when things become distracting, what you do is you breathe deeply and know that you have the power to manage your mind. Just that thought and that thought alone. And you will so very quickly find the distraction is released and you're back to this place of peace. It's easy to do. It's inherent in you. Find yourself here in paradise where distractions just go away in the air.
And you can also practice now releasing any agenda, any particular project or thought stream, allowing yourself to freely associate. Such that the idea of a distraction is irrelevant, that all thoughts are your thoughts. But instead of being the thinker, imagine yourself sitting back in an easy chair or a chaise lounge, as relaxed as you've ever been, and simply witnessing your thought stream flow by. A particular train of thought, followed by a different topic. And another subject jumps in. And your thoughts weave in and out. Some want to pull you to the past. Some want to drag you into fears of the future. But you're not the thinker right now. You're just relaxed. Like you might be in a movie theater. And passively watching the experience of these thoughts and feelings flow by, flow over you and through you and around you. You just don't hold on to any. You just don't pick any up. And you decide for another minute or two, at least, not to carry any of these or identify with them, as if this thought and this feeling that came with it is who I am now. When you watch a movie, it doesn't change who you are. Your thoughts and feelings are not who you are. They stimulate an awareness of who you are. But you're more than that. And by watching, and then at other times applying purposefully your attention and experiencing the level or degree of sensitivity to distraction, you become more mindful. You wake up from the fog, from the dream that most people are dreaming, victims of their own thoughts and feelings. Release that now. Be free from that. Tell yourself how easily you'll be able to remember for the rest of your life that you're not just the thinker or the feeler or the doer. You are a being that is self-aware. Awareness, you see, is understanding, really understanding.
So with distractions, know you can choose how short you want them to be. Keep your distractions extremely short, and what you'll easily see is that they can enhance and not abuse, not confuse, but just amuse. You'll find distractions add to your process. But if you let them go too long or let them get too strong, that takes you in the wrong direction. So understand, with each distraction, you have that moment of inspection, and you can say, I choose to keep this distraction very short. Just a few moments is fine, and then I'm going to go back to what I was working on before. I'm going to refocus my mind. Or I could say, this distraction is really interesting. I'm going to give it a minute or two, but then I need to get back to what I really do need to do. So you're in charge. You're in control if you take charge. Heart and soul, if you give it your all, if you decide this is what you choose, your mind's an amazing tool for you to use. But just imagine that you can say how short your distractions will be. Just give yourself that amazing power. That power will set you free. And who else could have that power besides you and your mind? There's nowhere else in the universe, anywhere, that you could find anyone who could have the power to decide how long your distractions will be. You're the only one who possibly can. So do so and set yourself free.
Bring to mind what you'll see in the room around you in just a moment when you finally open your eyes. Remind yourself of the value of sitting for 8, 10, 12 minutes at a time in a level like this, and how important it is to make it a daily process, to wake up fully and completely every day. And with that commitment to your self-awareness in mind, take a nice slow breath, inhaling, fill your lungs, hold for a beat, and now as you exhale, open your eyes wide awake, feeling fine, back in the room, alert, rested, refreshed, and better than before.
Better than before. We do need to spend some of our time wide awake. Most people seem to spend most of their time wide awake, but we're talking about using narrow awake as the doorway into fully awake. So you can't be wide awake all the time. You can't be fast asleep all the time. There's room in between for this incredible state of narrow awake where we have both of our minds sort of working together, and we have the ability to step back and observe ourselves in that higher consciousness. It's paradise. It's really a wonderful state of mind, this place of being able to be in charge of what goes on inside your own mind and body.
Tell your friends about the Finding Yourself in Paradise premium audio series at focusedpassion.com. We'll talk to you next week. Be gentle, love life, and take care of each other. For Steve Snyder, this is Michael Benner. Aloha from Maui.